If you're a dancer, actor, singer, writer, or visual artist who wants more from your creative life, but is scared of becoming maybe too hungry or hollow in the process, or looking selfish and self-absorbed and full of yourself, or performative, this episode is for you, because wanting more does not mean you've betrayed yourself as an artist or your art. Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist podcast, where artists of all kinds come to fuel their passion, sharpen their skills, and thrive in their creative lives. I'm your host, Lara Bianca Pilcher, life and creativity coach and fellow artist, here to support you on your artistic journey. Whether you're a performer, writer, visual artist, or any kind of artist, this is the space for real talk, practical advice, and inspiring stories. Subscribe and join us each week for more inspiration and actionable insights to fuel your artistry. Let's dive in and get inspired. Welcome back to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist podcast. I'm Lara Bianca Pilcher, an International Coaching Federation professional certified life coach, performer, and author. And today we're talking about something I think a lot of artists feel, but don't always know how to say out loud. You might feel shame in saying it out loud or a bit guilty, but you want more. You want more influence. You want more reach. We know most of us want more opportunities, more momentum, more money. Yes, please. More recognition, more impact, more of your work actually landing in the world, maybe even making a difference. But somewhere along the way, many artists start feeling, ashamed of these desires because they've absorbed this idea that if they really care about growth or visibility or success or being taken seriously, then you must be in some way drifting away from integrity, as though ambition automatically means ego, as though wanting your work to matter means you've sold out, as though staying pure means staying small. And I don't believe that. I think a lot of artists are not stuck because they lack talent. They're stuck because they have never fully made peace with their own wants, desires, and ambition. And if you're someone who cares deeply about your creative life, follow this show, subscribe to Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist, because these are the conversations we are having every week, not surface level, not just fluffy motivation, real conversations about what it takes to stay rooted as an artist. So, in this episode, I want to talk about the tension between ambition and integrity. Why so many artists feel conflicted around wanting more, or at least looking like they want more, and how to grow without abandoning yourself in the process. Now, I'll be the first to say I have been a hungry, ambitious artist, so I will share from a place of wanting more still today, and have pretty much always been that way. But before we go any further, if this conversation is your kind of conversation, my book is very much for you. It's called Audacious, Artistry, Reclaim Your Creative Identity and Thrive in a Saturated World, published traditionally in London by Collective Inc. And the heart of this book is this exact kind of question. How do you show up in this world, this saturated world, and build a beautiful, meaningful, creative life? If you head to larabiancapilcher.com/book, you'll find links for Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, Booktopia, all the places all around the world. And let it speak to you. You can find it again at larabiancapilcher.com/book. Now, I think one of the most painful places artists can live is in this silent inner split. Part of you wants to go further. Part of you wants to be seen. And goodness, for me as a performer, being seen is part of that. Most of the arts are part, that being seen part's a big piece. And part of you wants to grow, your work to grow. Part of you wants to stop playing so small. And part of you wants to stop pretending you'd be fine if nothing changed. But another part of you is afraid that success will make you look self-important, or afraid that visibility might make you look shallow or be shallow. I get it. Goodness, I really do, because not only am I someone who wants more, but sometimes I feel that pressure of what are other people going to think if I show up fully. Particularly as an Australian, it's partly a cultural inbuilt narrative. Don't be too big, that tall poppy syndrome. And some of you might recognize that in yourself, depending on the country that you are living in. Some of that cultural narrative. I live in the US now, and it certainly is not the cultural narrative, and I feel that shift. And I've also worked professionally and lived in London for over 7 years. So there is definitely a cultural thing that comes into play here. But if you're afraid that strategy, having a plan, will corrupt the purity of the work, or afraid that if you start naming, particularly out loud, what you really want, you'll somehow become less real, or somebody that people look at and just kind of go, get over yourself. So you stay in this strange middle ground. You work hard, but not always wholeheartedly. You hope, but you also dampen your hope. It's so common. You make things, but you sometimes hide behind, I'm just doing it for me, when actually part of you desperately wants what you make to connect and make a difference in the world. And that tension creates so much confusion, because now it's not only that the industry you're in, the creative industry, is hard, it's that you start becoming hard to read to yourself. Whether you're a dancer, actor, singer, writer, filmmaker, visual artist, any creative, this can show up in all sorts of ways. Here's what it could look like for you. You say you want opportunities, but you hesitate to share your work. You say you want to be taken seriously, but you underplay those big goals. Oh, I'm happy where I am. It's fine. You say you want to grow, but you feel suspicious of anyone who is visible, that artist that's showing up a lot. You sort of feel like critical and a bit cringy about them, yet you want to grow as well. That's more of an arrow and a directional point for you than anything else that I might talk about in this episode. You say you want a bigger creative life, but you're quietly scared that succeeding will cost you your soul in some way, shape, or form. And underneath that are so many familiar artist emotions: invisibility, comparison, rejection, slow seasons, perfectionism, the ache, oh gosh, that ache, we've all felt it, of feeling overlooked and unchosen and unseen and unworthy. The fear of trying harder and still not being chosen. Sometimes the issue is not that you want too much. Sometimes the issue is that you've been taught to distrust your own desire as an artist. And when artists distrust their desire, they often either overcorrect into self-erasure, like showing up small, or overcompensate into performance. An example of this is the artist who acts like they're a celebrity and they're not. Neither one of these feels like peace. I've seen this in coaching conversations so many times. An artist will say, I don't want fame. Many of them do. And usually when they say, I don't want fame, when we slow it down, that's actually not the full truth. What they mean is, I don't want to become disconnected from myself. I don't want to become fake. I don't want to chase approval until I feel sick. I don't want my worth to depend on applause. I just want an opportunity. Or they might be like, I don't want to build something that looks successful from the outside, but actually leaves me empty. That is Very different from saying, I don't want my work to matter. And that distinction really matters, because if you don't tell the truth about what you want, you can't build a creative life with integrity. You can only build one in the denial that you're in, that you don't really want to own. So here's the psychology of this. There are a couple of psychologically backed ideas here that I think are really useful to talk about. The first is this: when people feel an internal conflict between desire and identity, that sense of self, they often experience what psychology would call the cognitive dissonance. Let me explain. That's the discomfort we feel when two beliefs or values seem to clash inside us. So for an artist, it might sound like this: I want more success, but also good artists shouldn't care about success. We should care about the work. Or I want my work to reach more people, but also if I care about reach, maybe I'm not doing it for the right reasons. Maybe I have, things to work on. That kind of inner friction can really drain your creative energy. It makes you second guess yourself constantly. It can make you stall, procrastinate, sabotage visibility, or feel guilty every time something goes well. Gosh, I felt this. Like, oh my goodness, I'm in a season of success. I've got a new book in the world, or I've booked something, or I've done this. And oh my goodness, like I'm showing up bigger, and what will people think? And it's not because I'm choosing to show up bigger. It's because bigger opportunities have come, because I've stayed faithful to the work. And not because ambition is wrong, because your ambition and your identity have not been reconciled together. The second insight is around self-determination theory, which is a body of research that helps explain human motivation. And it's not just that you want fame. Very simple. This is what this is. People tend to function better when their actions are connected to internal values, not just external rewards. So the issue is not that external success exists, which a lot of us say is fame, but it's not always. Sometimes it's just having opportunity and working. The issue is when external success becomes the only thing steering your creative ship. When your actions are aligned with your values, ambition becomes sustainable. Maybe one of your values is, I love creative expression. I believe that my stories can make an impact and help people. And whatever success comes from that inner value is beautiful, because it means an opportunity for that value to be expressed. It's not that you are selfish or that you are just wanting fame. That's where we get off course. Because when your actions are disconnected from your values, maybe you're not aware of that value, ambition becomes like corrosive. It's like, oh, I just need it to feel important, to feel seen, and you're not connected to the deeper desire that your creativity brings life to you. That's why two artists can pursue similar opportunities and have very different internal experiences. One might feel really grounded, clear, and purposeful, while the other artist feels anxious, like performative, and constantly off balance. The difference is not always the size of the ambition. It's the relationship between ambition and who they feel like they are, their sense of self. And the big truth here, and in this episode, is that ambition is not what makes an artist lose themselves. Disconnection does. Disconnection from yourself, what you're really wanting, your values, your creative voice, and you just get caught up in wanting and chasing. I know what this actually looks like in practice, because I went through a season where I was chasing with ambition the status and the success and the visibility so that I felt like I had made it, so that I could be in that circle of success that looked like if I'm there, all my problems are over. I'm finally important. I'll be taken seriously as a person and an artist, and everything will be okay. But in that, desire, I was very disconnected from my own creative voice, performing literally, because I'm a performer, to please rather than to connect, rather than to express my creative identity. I was chasing opportunity to fulfill my sense of self. And that's the problem. Not wanting more, not building something, not growing, not being strategic. The danger is losing contact with your own voice, your own values, your own why, and your own limits while you do it. Oh goodness, and that's what makes success feel so hollow, and it destroys. How many artists have you seen make it to the highest echelons of success, and suddenly they're being whisked on tours night after night after night, performing, showing up, eventually turning to some sort of addiction to cope, or some upper or downer or something, and then that artist ends up taking their own life, worst case scenario. But it happens a lot, because that success, when you are walking in it without that grounded sense of who you are, is extremely hollow. It feels empty. It feels like everyone wants a piece of you and is using you for your success and not who you are. It is so hard to stay grounded at that level. And this is why this conversation is so important. If it's hitting something in you, send this episode to another artist who has been quietly wrestling with this. Because so many dancers, actors, singers, writers, filmmakers, and visual artists feel this tension, and they often feel alone. So share this with another creative friend you know, so that you can show up big, both of you, without losing your sense of self. And on that sharing note, at my website, there is a free group study at larabiancapilcher.com/book. At the end of every chapter of Audacious Artistry, there are coaching questions, and you can go through that in a group. A group can be 2 people. Yeah, you could do it by yourself, but imagine what it's like to share that experience with another creative soul and be able to dialogue and discuss. It's totally free. Just head to larabiancapilcher.com/book. Group study will pop up, or scroll a little and you'll find it. Fill in your email. I'll send it to you direct to your inbox, and you can sit down and do that study this year and go deeper. So, what does it look like to want more without losing yourself? I think it starts with a very honest question. What do I actually want, and why? Not what sounds humble, not what sounds spiritual, not what sounds acceptable in artistic circles, not what protects you from disappointment. What do you actually want, my creative artist friend? Do you want your work to reach more people? Do you want to be paid better? Do you want to make excellent work and also build a visible platform? Do you want to stop hiding? Do you want to contribute at a higher level? Do you want your artistry to take up more space in your real life? If you answered yes, you're just like me. I answer yes to all of those. And you are allowed to answer yes deep down in your soul. And then the second question is just as important. What must I refuse to become on the way there? That's where integrity comes in. Integrity is not shrinking your desire. Integrity is deciding the kind of person, an artist you will remain while desire expands. So maybe your version of integrity sounds like, I will not build my work on fakery. I will not let numbers decide my worth. I will not copy what isn't mine. I will not confuse visibility with value. I will not abandon my actual life to maintain an image. I will not betray the slower, deeper work just because speed isn't rewarded. That is a strong foundation, because now your ambition has guardrails. Now your growth has shape. Now, success is not only just something you chase, it's something you define. And I think artists need this. Because without a clear, intentional framework, it's very easy to swing between two extremes. One extreme says, strive endlessly, perform constantly, optimize everything, prove yourself at all costs. I've been there. But the other says, detach from all desire, pretend not to care, stay hidden, and call it integrity. That is not healthy. Neither one is healthy. A more mature creative life says, I can care deeply, I can work intentionally, I can want growth, and I can stay anchored in who I am. And that's not weakness, that is stewardship. And this matters, especially in the slow seasons. Because slow seasons can make you believe that wanting more is embarrassing. They can make you lower your expectations, play emotionally smaller, or try to numb the ache of disappointment by acting like none of it matters, none of this art matters anyway, it's not important, blah, blah, blah. But pretending not to care rarely heals anything. Usually it just disconnects you further from your own creative life. A better response is this: I care. I do want more. I do not need to become frantic to honor that. That's a very different creative energy. That's the difference between desperation and devotion. It's also worth saying that emotional momentum is not the same thing as identity. You may not feel brave every day. You may not feel confident every day. You may not feel certain about what you're doing every day. You may not feel lit up as an artist every day. But your identity as an artist does not disappear because your emotion and your emotional state fluctuates. They're different things. And your integrity does not disappear because you have ambition. Sometimes the most down-to-earth thing an artist can say is, I want more from my creative life, and I want to go after it in a way that I can respect, first and foremost. That sentence holds both hunger and peace. That sentence leaves room for excellence and honesty. That sentence does not make you less pure. It makes you integrated. And if this episode is helping you put language to something you haven't known how to say, following this podcast, subscribing on whatever platform you're on, really does help more artists to find these conversations. And if you've been listening for a while, a thoughtful review helps too. Not for vanity, but for reach. It helps the right people discover the show. And honestly, if this topic resonates, you'd probably also want to go back and listen to the episode on creative identity and the pressure to disappear in a saturated world, because this conversation builds on that one. Scroll back through, there is a huge library of help for whatever you might be going through. These ideas connect. Now, your creative spark challenge this week. Write this sentence down and finish it honestly. I want more from my creative life, but I'm afraid that wanting more will make me fill in the blank. Then ask yourself, what would ambition look like if it stayed in service of who I really am? Sit with that. Don't rush to make it sound polished. Just tell the truth. So, if I could leave you with one thing in this episode, it would be this. Wanting more does not mean you're losing yourself, or that you're selfish, or self-absorbed, or wrong. But building without self-awareness can. You are allowed to care about growth. You are allowed to want your work to matter. You are allowed to desire momentum, visibility, recognition, and deeper impact. The work is not to shame that desire. The work is to anchor that desire, to know who you are before the outcome, to define success in a way that does not hollow you out, to grow from this place inside of conviction and not panic, to build from identity, not for identity. And thank you for being here with me on Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist. If this episode resonated, follow Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist so you don't miss what's next. And next time we're talking about what staying with your art actually requires. And I think that's going to speak to artists who are tired of surface level encouragement and ready for something deeper and more honest. One more thing before we finish. If you care about emotional health and relationships, Andrew, my husband, and I, Lara, host another podcast called Marriage, Intimacy and Healing with Andrew and Lara. It's a very different conversation, but with the same heart for honest, down-to-earth transformation to help you show up. That is another program of Creative Restoration International, our not-for-profit that does work in the artist restoration and the marriage restoration spaces so that life, these two parts of our life, can have the most beautiful stories to tell. That home becomes a sanctuary, that art becomes something beautiful again, and that you can live with as much joy as you tell the story of your own life. And thank you for being here. I'm with you on the journey. I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Artist podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an inspiring conversation or actionable insight. You can read the show notes and learn more at larabiancapilcher.com. And be sure to share this episode with fellow artists who could use a little extra inspiration. Until next time, keep creating, stay audacious, and remember, your artistry matters.